Just to kind of get started, my name's Jessica. I'm the Director of Senior Living Initiatives with AGE-u-cate Training Institute. And one of my colleagues, Andrew, to me, is in this corner. You can say hi, Andrew.
Hi guys, how are you?
So Andrew and I work fiercely together on our grant projects oftentimes, but our paths intersect quite a lot as well. So I'm happy to have Andrew with us on the call today. And then Susan to my left, I don't know where she is on your screen, but Susan, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself really quick.
Oh, sure. I'm the founder of Reading to Connect, one of AGE-u-cate's fabulous programs.
That's right. That's right. Thanks for being here today, Susan. And so everyone else, I'll give you a moment here to introduce yourself, but I'm going to share my screen real quick just so that we can kind of have something to follow along with. I'm a visual person, so I hope that suits your needs as well. But let's see. So I just wanted to kind of start a conversation, really. I know I have a little PowerPoint slide, but it's not really so much of a presentation. I would love to have lots of conversation today and just ways that we can build each and every one of us off of conversations or presentations that we were able to be observers to during the Pioneer Conference that we had last week. So hopefully everyone is rested up from the travels and all the information overload into your brains. I know I had to take a big nap that afternoon when I got home, especially after the 4.5 hour drive. I was pretty exhausted. So welcome to our little powwow. So my initial thoughts or takeaways that I had, Barry Barkin in his welcome session said, community is the foundation of innovation. And so for me, that was just like the root of why we were there. You know, we were trying to create a community, but also from there to have these fantastic constructive conversations to help us with innovating so that we have even more quality senior care than we're already providing. A few things otherwise that I just took away was just some really innovative life enrichment tools. Obviously, we're here a little bit to talk about the session that we had on life enrichment and engaging life enrichment tools, which Susan will talk with us a little bit about later. But I saw all sorts of other tools that was being utilized, both in a vendor side of things, but also in some of the presentations that were offered, just really interesting ways people are engaging with their residents and developing relationships with them. And I was truly inspired. And so I hope all of you were too. Of course, we also saw some new approaches to care about things from lighting. And I'll talk in a second, just a takeaway I had from a presentation about undisturbed sleep, but also just the way that we're laying out our facilities and how we're facilitating an environment that is helpful to our elders, but especially our elders who have dementia. The biggest thing was I was just surrounded by people who were true pioneers. We had the opportunity a few different times to see in a few different panel presentations while we had lunch and things like that of these people who literally paved the way for the amazing things that we're able to continue doing and to just continue to develop on as we pursue our careers and all the ways that we serve the seniors in each of our own communities. So at this kind of moment, I wanted to see if anyone else had some big takeaways that they wanted to share with us and kind of where your thought process is kind of running, so to speak, with those takeaways.
I had a couple.
Please.
And one of the best is that there's a lot of awareness about how important family is in the entire process.
Yes.
And, and that's new. That didn't exist before COVID.
That's very true.
And a lot of the conversation about, the staff and how we care for them. And like when Dr. T said, normally when somebody's burnt out, we tell them to go home and take some time to themselves and isolate and da-da-da. And statistics are showing that's not always the best thing. Sometimes when you're burnt out, you need to step away from what you're doing, but you need to socialize and be around people.
Yeah. I remember one of his takeaways, Carrie, was something about the way self-care has redefined itself, especially with technology in the last 5 to 10 years. We used to do self-care by being with other people, and now self-care oftentimes is defined as being by ourselves, going for a walk with headphones in or having a spa day by yourself, things like that. So finding ways that we can get our caregivers involved with each other and their own community and support system to prevent burnout was a really big takeaway for me too. Carrie, would you mind sharing who you're with, your organization, just so we can all kind of get to know each other? Again, we're creating a community here today.
So I'm Carrie Welgedahl. I'm with Illinois Caregivers for Compromise and Great Panthers NYC. I'm a family advocate who has a 35-year-old adult son that lives in a long-term care facility.
Thank you, Carrie. Yes, I remember meeting you several different times. I'm so glad you're able to join us today. And
And if I
Natalie,
can jump in really quickly,
please.
Carrie has been such a great advocate. I've actually been following her for about 4 years now, I think, since it started when I was working in Illinois. So, Carrie, just personally, I want to say thank you for all of the work and the advocacy that you have been doing throughout COVID and now continuing into this. You are truly a pioneer. So thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
I agree.
That means a lot.
Good work, Carrie. Natalie, you had your hand raised. You wanted to share?
Yeah, so I'm Natalie Yates-Bolton. I'm from the UK and I work at a university teaching healthcare professionals, but I also have my own coaching company, 5 Blocks Coaching. So I was attending really in both capacities. So I think the things that I've really taken away kind of follows on from what Carrie was saying, but probably because of my connection being more about coaching staff, about how important it is to empower, enable, and equip staff so they can go and empower, enable, and equip residents to live their lives to the full. So you're helping staff fulfill their potential so that residents can fulfill their potential. So it's a win-win situation and nobody's
Yeah.
losing. So that
Yeah.
was definitely a message that I kind of took half of it myself to the conference, but I came back with like a much bigger picture. So that was,
Yeah.
I've came back really, I'm always motivated, but I came back really refreshed in myself in terms of my motivation and my like being inspired by the very compassionate people who were attending, like the 500 or 600 that were there. It was a really powerful environment to be in. And then the
Yes.
other thing that I took away was a phrase person directed. So in the UK, we still seem to be using the phrase person centered, which I was kind of thinking, I'm sure there's a better phrase than this. And I heard person directed a lot. And so I gave that phrase to a PhD student today who's doing her PhD on the experience of people with dementia and dog ownership in their own homes. And she's kind of doing very co-constructed with the participants. And I said, I'm just going to give you a phrase that I heard last week, person directed. And I said, I'm just going to leave you with that phrase rather than person centered. I want you to think about person directed and what does that mean? So kind of already casting because I've been on leave this week. And I'm still on leave now. So I've been on leave since I left the conference, but that's been my first tiny bit of work today since the conference. And I could already hand something I've learned on to somebody else for them to take it and do as they wish with. So yeah, that's kind of what I in a way.
That's beautiful. I didn't catch that statement during the conference. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a beautiful way of putting things. Definitely. Anybody else have anything they wanted to kind of share and dialogue on? Well, welcome to. Please go right ahead, Paul.
Oh, good. Oh, my mic is on. Okay, I was trying to figure out. One of these days I'll get this all figured out. Anyway, for me, the Tresiac, the keynoter, I mean, it was just, I was stunned. That's the only other word. It just felt so justified in the whole business of compassion. And when he said that, it actually went to physical changes. For example, the reduction of the reports of pain. I mean, that just stopped me in my tracks because I've done a smaller study, and I'm actually going to send a copy of the report to him we found the same thing. The nursing homes where there were strong volunteer programs were using less drugs. And the one that shocked us, we expected to see less depression, but instead we saw reports of less pain.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so I was just stunned.
Yeah.
That's the only other word.
Sometimes that's, yeah. Paul,
Uh,
what's your role, sir? Would you mind sharing for us?
yeah, I just started a new organization, and Susan's on the board. It's the National Association of Long-Term Care Volunteers.
Oh, sure.
And,
Okay.
and what I'm advocating for is that, particularly for people that do not have families or friends visiting them, that who visits them, who spends time with them. And so I'm advocating for companion volunteers, training and placing companion volunteers, and even going as far as to say that at some point, if we ever go back into something like the pandemic, that they would be designated as essential caregivers. So, because how many people in the nursing homes during the pandemic had no family at all?
Paul,
Right.
this is Carrie again.
Yeah.
No.
Go for
I'm
it,
gonna
Carrie.
put my email in the chat box. Will you reach out to me, please? I'm actually one of the 12 families that wrote the Federal Essential Caregiver Act. And I would love to speak with you, because we didn't meet at the conference because there was not enough time to meet everybody. So I'll put my
Yeah.
email in the chat, please, if you'd reach out to me.
Thank you. That would be
You bet.
perfect, Carrie. Lovely, lovely.
This meeting has been a huge success.
Yeah. Philbert, did you have input for us? Oops, sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. I was a little bit late. I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I'm a director of care in one of the nursing homes from Action Marguerite. So the conference was great. I had so many things actually, of which I have to go through and read my notes. But one of the things actually was on sleep, how we should probably keep good sleep for our residents. So many to do with compassion, so many learnings and stuff to learn about dementia. I probably decided to, the way I do my recruitment and interviews, to add questions on dementia. So is giving orientation, like during orientations or trainings, I always have to, now that's the decision we are making here, to offer some learning on dementia care and compassionate care, like regularly, not just initially, but ongoing, probably every year or so. Another thing was a dignity of risk. We have to be able to give chances to our residents to actually to take risks, not to restrict them. We allow them to live their life, to have a quality of life.
That's right. That's right.
Technology call light to decrease noise. Like when we visit this home, I think the call bell, whatever the roam alert, were all connected to this technology, so not to cause noise in the hallways. And so I have so many things, but I'm still going through my notes to know
Processing.
exactly what to do. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I know I've had to process things a couple of times, going through my notes multiple times, and I had different takeaways each time. So I totally respect the need to continue to process. But thank you. I'm so glad you got so much information out of the sessions that you were able to attend. That's wonderful. Anybody else?
And Dementia Live too, remember your session?
Yes. And Dementia Live. For sure. Definitely. All right. Well, I'm going to kind of go through some of the things that I had some takeaways. Just feel free to chime in wherever you had input, if you were able to attend these sessions, or even if you weren't. So I attended a session, Policies, Practices, and People, with Jennifer Artisensi, and she talked about quality of life. She did a study basically in a nursing facility. I am totally shrinking her presentation down to 2 pieces that I'm pulling out of it. But it was interesting. They did essentially this poll from resident CNAs, activity directors, social workers, and administrative staff. as to what they felt was the most to the least, or the first to the fifth greatest impact or influencer on a resident's quality of life. And so you can kind of see how everything ranked in there. I found it interesting. She also did in her research that staff and resident relationships were first or second in everyone's opinion. And so that was just really, as much as it should be obvious, it was very eye-opening that everyone felt that way. But how often, especially in a long-term care, like more institutional setting, do we often put that relationship to the side, even though we know it's the most important? Why are we putting it on a back burner from time to time? Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time to sit and talk with you right now, and running away. And so we're just trying to do the best we can. I think this also alludes a little bit into, staffing ratios and how we set expectations as leaders of our organizations of where we want our staff to spend their time. But we can see that everyone, including the resident, really felt that the relationships between the staff and the person that they're caring for is one of the most, if not the most important aspects towards their quality of life. So
It
just
is
kind of defining that.
100%. It's 100% probably the most important, because the
Yes.
residents start to see the staff as their family.
Right.
And if you're living in the correct environment, which my son is, it is fostered. It is
Yeah.
encouraged.
That's
And
right.
and that's what it should be everywhere.
Yes. Yes. I would love for Jennifer to pull this information over into some of our regulatory, at least here in the United States, into our regulations surrounding staffing mandates, because we can see that we need time to develop these relationships, and certain staffing ratios may not be all that conducive for that to happen. Susan, did you have some input?
Yeah. Was there a choice of resident to resident relationships?
Not in her study. It was
Yeah.
all in relation to the resident and then the caretakers themselves.
Right, which is so important, but also we have
Agreed.
to go further, I think,
Yep.
or expand to two other types of relationships: resident to resident,
Yep.
and then resident to the community, the outer community. We were talking
Agreed.
somewhere in some session about making the care community, skilled memory care, whatever, more porous. And that's where Paul comes in, like getting
Yes.
volunteers, getting people, because that's a lot of stress on staff to do
Right.
everything they want, they need to do, and not be able to do usually what they want to do, which is to make people happy, and they need personal connections too.
Exactly.
The
Yeah.
whole thing about social isolation and stuff, now we're putting it on the staff more. So, which we're not
Yeah.
really. I mean, we're trying to change the whole system,
Exactly.
but we need to move
Yeah.
forward and think about what can residents do for each other.
Yeah. No, one thing that I put in my notes really in this conversation while I was sitting in Jennifer's session was, how do we blur the line, right? So like the line being the parameters of our institutional like setting. So how do we blur that line? How do we find a way for things to be a little bit more transient in between, like you said, the community and the residents and the staff, and it be much more open flow of relationship and a little less, this is what happens inside of this box type of an idea. So again,
Yes,
hers was just
more
kind of looking at the
organic.
policy side of things. So she was just examining one perspective, but I completely agree with you, Susan. I see lots of heads nodding. I think most of us in attendance at the conference agree as well. Is there anybody who's found an interesting way to go about blurring that line between the community and the care setting itself?
Well, I feel like a broken record because you know what I'm going to say, but the idea is having a robust volunteer program where you're pulling people in from the community for a variety of activities. It could be one-offs, it could be projects. I'm kind of focused on the companion thing right now because of what happened during the pandemic. But the idea is, and that volunteer becomes a bridge between
Yes.
the community at large and the nursing home. And I want to comment too. I've talked to CNAs and others that work in the staff. They feel that same separation.
Yeah.
They go out into their community and somebody will ask them, so where do you work? Oh, I work at the nursing home. Oh. And there's
Yeah.
already this, okay,
Yeah.
end the conversation. So
Yeah.
they feel that as well. They feel that disconnect as well. And I think that one of my things that I'm kind of tackling right now with these action plans that are coming out of the innovation group is there's almost, and I've read all 9 of those action plans. There's almost no talk about increasing community engagement, and they've really got to address this. Otherwise, you're going to wind up with this island of little houses instead of one big building, but it'll still be isolated.
That's right. Yes.
So anyway, okay.
No, I appreciate that, Paul. Thank you so much.
So there's a facility in Massachusetts that was built opposite of anything I've ever heard of. They built the outside community first. They built conference rooms and a coffee shop and an art display room and an amphitheater and things like that. And then they built the assisted living around it so that when they opened the assisted facility, the residents of the outside community were already used to being there and in place. And I just read a book by the gentleman who did this. His name is Joe Corella. And I've spoke with him. It's an amazing theory. It's actually used in Sweden. And I think that in itself is part of what we need in this country, is to look at how do we naturally bring the community inside and not so much the volunteers and all the rest, which yes, we need those too, but we need it to be more of a natural integration.
Yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
I've been there. It's called the Scandinavian Living Center.
There you go. Thank you.
It's
I'm
outside
actually
of Boston, if anybody wants to look it up. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm putting the name of the book in the chat right now.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. All right. Natalie, did you have something?
Yeah, just my background is obviously a little bit different, but when I did my PhD on, it's called Flourishing, How to Enhance Meaning and Purpose in Nursing Home Life, I asked the residents if they'd like to share the findings with me at a conference. And so one of the residents came with me and I was like the warm-up act and he was the main speaker. And when he spoke, the room was silent. And he'd been a Royal Air Force teacher of aircraft safety, and he had to teach the Navy aircraft safety because it kept causing the planes to crash on the aircraft carriers. And he knew safety in and out, yet he'd had his wheelchair taken off him, his electric wheelchair, because he had an accident in it and he fully understood the risk. So he was just an amazing speaker and he had so many strengths that he far surpassed anything I had to say. And then at the conference, a journal author asked if him and his wife would co-author a piece with them. So he really had his voice heard, not just at the conference, but in wider publication. And I was really pleased that the work we'd done together, he became the voice piece for it. So I think asking residents if they want to go to meetings and whatever the meeting is, policy, research, whatever, their voice can be so very, very powerful. And I was delighted to just be the warm-up act.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing, Natalie. All right. Well, I'm going to kind of keep going here. We were also, another one of my takeaways was just from Jennifer's conversation was about relationships and the prevalence and the need for resident choice, which ties exactly into what you were just talking about, Natalie, and just offering so much respect for these people, these fellow people in our community. You know, they're not the elders, they're not, necessarily other people we serve. Like, it's just about respecting them as who they are and where they come from and what their goals are for where they want to go in their life. So in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving, but I think it just beautifully touches on all the things that we were just discussing. So like I mentioned earlier, maybe before a few of you were able to join, but I was able to be present for another breakout session about undisturbed sleep. And having been practicing as an administrator in memory care environments and just generally skilled nursing and assisted living environments, I know that most of the residents are not sleeping well, but seeing what the outcomes from a good night rest could provide to them, just I think it was kind of like what I think Natalie, you had shared, was it just kind of reaffirmed what I already knew. It just kind of reignited this desire to find a way to eliminate this and provide them with a good night's rest in this particular case. So it was just, there was a lot of little small takeaways from that. But the study that they had conducted said over 70% of memory care residents struggle with chronic sleep issues. I would venture to gain that that's a little bit more like over 90%, most likely. There's so many noises and so many reasons that we interrupt the sleep of the folks that we care for, all with good intention, of course, but just finding a way that we can do that, do what we're there to provide the care that we're there for, but in a way that doesn't disrupt their sleep, or giving them the autonomy of, you know what, no, don't check on me with any of this stuff because I'm fine. It was also interesting to me, there was a discussion, they didn't have a slide on it, but maybe you could do a little bit of your own research, especially if you're seeing the folks in your care struggle with the same issues of sleep disturbance, but the difference between white noise and pink noise. And then there was all these other colors. There's like brown noise and blue noise and all these things that I'd never heard of. And actually, like, I was always taught with small children that white noise is helpful to help them sleep, but I guess that can be very auditorily like not conducive to helping them achieve REM cycle. And so pink noise is actually what's most recommended. So yeah, just there was a lot of interesting takeaways from that, and just like the causes of why residents have chronic sleep issues was very interesting. So I know Phil was able to attend that session with me. We had a few aha moments with a neurologist that was in the audience with us. He provided such valuable insight to that session. I'm so glad that gentleman was able to attend, but I know several of us in attendance of that session was also able to kind of talk through a couple of particular resident situations in their own buildings and kind of come up with some interesting theories around like amber light usage and things like that as well. Was there anybody else who was able to attend that session, or any interesting perspective on sleep issues in the care setting? All right, no problem. Okay, so I also, of course, wanted to touch base a little bit about the presentation that my friend Susan, that all of you seem to have met at some point in time or another, was able to present at the Pioneer Conference on her pilot study that was done at Ascension Senior Living on reading to connect. And I pulled some things here, but I'm actually going to switch it over to Susan so that we can kind of talk through some of the things that she was able to present at the conference. Go ahead, Susan.
Yeah, I'm just waiting to share my screen.
Oh,
I think we have to stop sharing to.
Yeah, one
Anyway,
second.
yeah. So, okay. Yeah, it was a great conference. So let's see, we gave a presentation on a pilot study that we did that was funded by Beryl Institute to assess the impact of reading to connect in a care community in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And that community was under Ascension Living, that senior company. And so I was really excited that Ascension Living got this grant, because I thought, yay, we're going to get some really good evidence and data, and we're going to be able to publish it, and it's going to be great. And Dr. Amy Elliott, she's a professor from Ohio State. She was working on the research part of it. But so we went in there with all kinds of tools and things that the staff could use to assess the impact of reading to connect on residents and on themselves. Well, reality set in, and the staff were kind of like, okay, all right, I'll do this. And then, of course, they didn't really do it because they're working so hard. And so we worked with them and adapted it, said, okay, well, what if we did it this way? What if we made the form this way? What if we provided it to you in paper form? What if we provided it online, etc.? So anyway, so what came out of it after, I don't know, 8 or 9 months, is that okay that I let that person in?
Yeah, totally fine. And you're able to share now too, while we're on the.
I did it without even thinking. I just,
fine, totally fine.
Jennifer. And so anyway, so we got all this really cool data, but the researcher says this isn't really a research, there's no control group. There's tons of holes in the research. This isn't going to be publishable. So I was kind of sad, even though like it looked good, but But then she said, what this is, though, is a really efficient, practical, relatively simple way for care communities and for senior care companies to assess what the efficacy of their life engagement resources. So whether it's a music program, whether it's pets coming in, whether it's volunteers, whether it's reading to connect, whatever it is, we actually now we've put together a model, if you will, with a few tools, really good tools that we've worked really hard to mold them so that a very, very busy staff member could fairly easily fill them out, complete them, and all the while, after a couple of months, collect documented data about how is this, whatever it is, this life enrichment resource impacting the residents social emotionally. So we broke it down into just 3 parts, 3 time segments, and then 3 things that the staff are looking at and checking off with very little effort. So how were the residents in terms of their emotions, their engagement, and their communication before reading to connect? Then the staff gets reading to connect going. The residents have the materials in front of them, whether they're interacting with them or not, but they have access to them. And again, the staff then makes a judgment. How is that particular resident's emotions, engagement, and communication? Then when time goes on and reading to connect materials are put away and they're out of access to the resident, again, how are their emotions, engagement, and communication? Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about that? Before I share? No?
I don't see any hands raised.
Okay. So was that clear? Sorry, I'm looking for my...
Yeah.
It was clear. Okay. And then at the end of the presentation, they got this really neat guide put out by AGE-u-cate and Reading to Connect. And it's basically, I think it's 5 pages, 7 pages. And it's basically telling how they can implement this too. And this turns out to be really good. We got a lot of good feedback because people were saying it's going to help them look at those kind of programs that have been going on maybe for quite a while. Maybe there's a subscription fee. And so they kind of keep going with it, but they've never really asked and they've never really assessed, is it impactful at all? Like, how are residents respond? Are residents better off with this, and are staff better off with this? So this is a model of evaluation to make sure that your money's going where it should be, that it's really helping.
Be most effective.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so I'm just gonna go. No, that's not what I want. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to get my PowerPoint. Speak among yourselves while I figure out where my PowerPoint is.
Are any of you all familiar with the Reading to Connect program or using a similar assessment tool to kind of evaluate life enrichment?
Oh God, here it is. Sorry, I got it.
You're okay. Thank you.
Okay, I can't seem to, so give me just a few minutes, okay? Can't seem to.
There you go.
Okay, so I guess first I'll just show you. So this is Reading to Connect. Sorry, I'm trying to get rid of that black bar. Okay.
There you go.
So this is simply, so Reading to Connect produces age and dementia-friendly booklets that are just what they say, that that many people living with dementia can interact in some way in their own way. So whether it's holding it and turning the pages and responding to the pictures, or whether it's reading the text, or whether it's sharing and talking about what they see or what they're doing. So these are example pages from some of our books, and we have many, we have over 50 booklets. So you can see the print, the text is bold. There's not a lot of it. There's a lot of images on every picture. There are illustrations. Some of the books have a little bit of text. Some of them have more. The sentences are isolated for all kinds of, there's all kinds of text modifications to compensate for the cognitive difficulties that most people with dementia have. The topics are age appropriate. The topics, actually, the content we found is so important. People will not read something that's dry, that's juvenile, that's insipid. They have to be drawn in. They have to, it has to mean something to them. And I don't just mean, oh, a book about dogs because they love dogs, although that's good. But most people, if it's presented in a way maybe like this, I think that's engaging and that's kind of draws them in, they want to learn. They want to know about things that they don't know about. They really, the sense of curiosity in people with dementia is no less than when they didn't have dementia, or than people who don't have dementia. And that's probably the number one thing that really hit us when we started this 10 years ago was, wow, people love to find out things. And again, this is something where they are in control. Some of the topics are historic. Some of them are religious, cultural, you know, things that basically went on during the 20th century. Now, what we found is that not only that reading is a big part of it, but not only that, it stimulated lots and lots of thoughts, lots and lots of opinions, lots and lots of conversation. And because of the way Reading to Connect is set up, we use Montessori principles. So it's all about looking at the environment, looking at how their physical posture, looking at their relationship to the table, relationship to the book, do they need a book stand, and their relationship to each other, so that they're able to quickly shift from eye gaze on the book to eye gaze on the resident who's with them. So it's all about, you know, it's like a garden, making the garden all perfect for growth. And with Reading to Connect, the Reading to Connect social engagement groups, the staff are not generally part of the group. They're in our training sessions, they're sort of, the strong suggestion is you should think about moving away from the group. You should think about setting everything up in the most optimal way for those residents, and then moving away and let them just organically direct their own experience. So you have resident direct experience. You also have an organic, spontaneous experience. You have people helping each other.
Yeah, I think the books offer a really fantastic tool, if you will, on how we can blur those lines, like we were talking earlier, just a way to find a way that it's not all just resident to their caretakers. It's about the community, it's about their peers and everyone else in their environment, or that should be in their environment in some cases too. So Susan, I haven't had the opportunity yet to attend a training session of you providing these books to any of the communities. I'm sure that's not too far in the future, but I was curious, do you see in a lot of facilities where they use it with their volunteer programs too?
You know, it's funny, I've been to so many care communities over the years, and it's amazing how different, you know, some people will say we don't have volunteers, some people will say, oh, we have one, and other people say we have many volunteers.
Okay.
volunteers that absolutely love this. I mean, I think it's part of the training. We talk about how to incorporate volunteers, but the ones that really love this are residents who live in IL, the residents who are there in the huge care community. They're on their own. They want to help out, but they don't really know what to do. But these books help. These books serve as a conversational
conduit. Yeah.
Everybody knows how to share a book. So here's just a quick video of a small group. Again, this happens to be in a day center, an adult day center. But again, they're helping each other, they're problem solving, they're enjoying each other. They know that everything is on them to make this group successful because the staff people are out of their field of vision.
That's right.
Good turn, Bob. Three. Number three.
The female northern cardinal is a unique bird. He's one of the few female birds who sings.
Yum yum. Yum yum. Bird is the cry. Okay, badfinches are among the strictest vegetarians in the bird.
Oh, what a beautiful day. I got a good feeling. Everything's going my way.
He's got a
beautiful feeling that everything's going Bob's way.
That's the end of that one.
And read it together. So. Okay.
Ready?
You can say it together. I will show you. As a baby, Moses was found floating on the river Nile. Floating on the river Nile. And then, in a basket. Moses said to them, Pharaoh, let my people go.
And my people survived.
You get better and better. Go ahead.
Love her.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Susan.
Any thoughts or questions or? But again, just to emphasize that relationships between the best, most wonderful staff is a wonderful thing and so needed. Not saying it's not needed, but it's not a balanced relationship, right? They know, everybody knows this person's taking care of me. It's not balanced. We all need balanced relationships with our peers in whatever way the term peer is used. And if we're going to do something about this social isolation thing, then we have to bring to the forefront, how can residents support each other? The resources right there. One of the reasons that it doesn't often happen is because people with dementia need usually a lot of support to engage in a conversation with each other. So it has to be mindfully done. You have to give a good, accessible, manageable, concrete thing that they can focus on and that provides them the framework, because it's very hard for them to abstract. And then you have to set it all up so that they can hear each other, they can attend to each other really close generally. So that's all right. That's my soapbox.
No, I think it's just Reading to Connect is a fantastic example of one of those innovations that you've adapted to help move senior care forward. So we just have to find ways of, instead of a staff-led reading circle, becoming Reading to Connect and being resident-led and resident-directed and building those relationships amongst each other. How do we apply that theory to our other life enrichment tools and help it so that it's less of a taxing thing on the staff, less of a responsibility, I guess, if you will, and much more where the residents are able to organically form these relationships. Is there anything any of you all have seen in the communities you lead or communities you might be involved in where innovations like this application of Reading to Connect has come into play? No. That's okay. All right. Well, any other for the last 10 minutes or so of our time together today, I just kind of wanted to open the floor back up again and see if anyone had any insight or questions they wanted to ask the group. You know, we have a fairly diverse subsection here of the folks who were able to attend the conference, some senior living, some family caregivers, some in the university realm of things, some in more the research side. So I just wanted to see if anyone had any thought-provoking questions to ask of the group. Karen? There you go.
My name is Karen Klink, and I was not at the conference, so I'm not sure I'm supposed to be here or not, but
you're welcome all the time. No problem.
I was told about the wrap up, and I really wanted to be at the conference. And I am a daughter with a mother with dementia, an advocate. I was one of the original group of Essential Caregivers Coalition in California.
Wonderful.
Very involved in getting visitation and making sure that we don't have that issue happen again. And then got more involved in long-term care reform, and feel it's very important that families have a seat at the table, which I find that is not the case in most cases. So I'm very involved in that aspect. So this whole concept, my mom was in a memory care, supposed to be a very good memory care. I thought it was terrible for 2.5 years.
That's unfortunate.
And, they're supposed to be trained in memory care, and dementia. I find that that's not the case. I find memory care basically a marketing term, and it was a big institutional place. And after 2.5 years of very little communication and transparency and this and that, I took her out and moved her into a very, very small place. So, and I have problems in there. So, so I need something like, this is why I'm listening, because I find that there's I had one set of issues there where there was no one-on-one and no compassion and it was such an institutional type setting. And now my mom's in a place, but there's supposed to be a 6-bed, but they only have 2 or 3 people there. And so I'm finding that there is no there is no one, the residents don't have communication with each other because they're at different levels, and the staff doesn't communicate with them. So she's losing, except for when her kids come, she's losing that ability. So, there are answers out there. It's just very frustrating for someone like me that knows there are ways to do it and hears ways to do it, but has a really hard time trying to incorporate that into people. When for me to go to one of those places, they don't want to hear it. So
understand.
You mean if you try to communicate to them, say having a volunteer program or having pets or something?
Yes, anything. Yeah,
that's horrible. That's horrible.
It's horrible. I'm sorry. I'm glad you're able to join our call today, Karen, though, and see that quality care is out there and there is hope in the horizon for our whole industry. But you're right, it is difficult to get all parties on board. Some are very stuck in the mud, so to speak, about the more traditional perspectives on how we provide care. And I hope that you're able to take some of these tools, things that you've heard about today, and share those. And maybe those will be taken with an open mind and an open heart, and they will start to adopt some of these,
absolutely.
these mindsets.
And having some research to back it up, and having some
exactly
is very helpful. Thank you.
Good. Oh, I'm so glad. I'm glad it's been helpful for you.
I would also suggest or offer to you that if you are so, lucky to be able to get the ear of somebody at your community, feel free to direct them to any of us on the AGE-u-cate team. And we're happy to talk with them directly as well and support you in your efforts to try to improve the quality of life there. So,
yes. Thanks, Julie. Anybody else with some final thoughts from the conference or from today's discussion even? All right. Well, thank you again. Go ahead, Susan.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that Reading to Connect offers care communities at no cost a virtual reading session. So in other words, so we have our books, of course, are in physical form, but they're also in ebooks and audiobooks. So what I do is a social engagement activity for all kinds of care communities, adult day centers or memory care skills. And you bring the residents or the clients. I get up on a screen, virtual, with my ebooks there in the screen, and I just very lightly facilitate a reading session and discussion session with and that's at no cost. And then I also provide workshops and webinars that talk about how to incorporate adaptive reading into the lives of people who can no longer read typical published material.
Thank you, Susan. Thanks for reminding us those tools are available. Appreciate that. Appreciate you and all the things you do for the residents we take care of. So I will give you guys all a few minutes back of your afternoon before you have to hop on to the next thing, or your morning, Karen, being in California. But just in case you wanted to reach out to myself or Susan, our contact information is there on the screen. Of course, Susan is a fantastic resource for Reading to Connect, but we do offer Reading to Connect in partnership with AGE-u-cate. And so you're welcome to reach out to me about Reading to Connect or any of the other programs that we offer. Our website's literally just my email. It's AGE-u-cate.com. And a few of you, I think, were able to attend our Dementia Live session on Wednesday. So if you have questions about how to get Dementia Live, Reading to Connect, or any of our other programs, Compassionate Touch or what have you, I can be your resource for that as well. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Yep. Take care.
Long. Bye.